Today's question is one I get asked all the time, and honestly, it's one I've asked myself too. Is a 5-star hotel actually worth the price? Because when you start staying in them as often as I do, the answer becomes a lot more complicated than you might think. So let's get into it. You know that feeling when you watch a luxury hotel review and something just doesn't add up? Welcome to Suitcase Confessions. I'm Sylvahna, and this is where I say the things most travel creators won't. Real stories, honest opinions, and the side of luxury travel nobody's showing you. Let's get into it. Oh my god, you guys, it is hot. I cannot even. I have my coffee here, and I'm very thankful for my coffee because I almost did not sleep last night because of the heat. Thankfully, there is an air conditioning arriving today. I actually wanted to order that before we left for Paris, but I thought, well, now let's just keep the money for Paris. And then when we get back, we will see when we get back. But right now I'm having some regrets, but thankfully it's arriving today. The temperature is down a little bit right now, so I decided to open the windows here. So I hope you don't experience too much background noise. But yeah, that being said, let's get into the episode. So let's discuss the 5-star hotels and if they're worth their price. Thank you, bird. So I'm going to close the window. I can have it closed for like the time I'm recording this episode so that you will have the best experience listening because it's super annoying. There's so much noise on the street, like alarms constantly going off, birds constantly, I don't know, telling their life story to each other, cars honking, like, those things. So let's be zen for this episode. So what I wanted to say is about the 5-star hotels. They are so different in price and in what you get for that price. They're just, at this point, they're like all kinds of hotels going through my mind, like where I stayed at and how different it was. And because I was going to say, I think one of the best hotels I've ever stayed at was almost the lowest in price. And it's crazy because that's just not what you expect, right? You expect how much more you pay, how better the experience will be. And that's just not always the case. So let's talk about a moment where the hotel was completely worth every penny and one that completely wasn't worth every penny. Like, a funny story, they are both, well, maybe not, let's not include Disney. Yeah, I was just thinking about my stay at the Disneyland Hotel because that was epic, like epic. But let's go with another one because I also have another one. Yeah, so outside of Disney, the best hotel that I have stayed at that was definitely worth every penny. I did not have a single second of regret of spending my money there was at the Botanic Sanctuary Hotel in Antwerp. It was an amazing hotel. The price I paid for that stay was nothing compared to the one I'm going to talk to you about. That was the opposite experience. I paid, let me think, I believe I paid 1,600 euros for 3 nights in a junior suite. It was excluding breakfast, so it was just the stay. We did have breakfast there. Breakfast was freaking amazing. Like everything else there, it was seriously still to this date one of the best experiences I've had at a 5-star hotel. It was, they literally had everything. It was such a big hotel. It felt like you were just staying in some kind of a village. It had like its own park and a pretty big spa. with a couple of saunas, a swimming pool, a pretty large gym. And they had, I believe, 2 different restaurants inside the hotel. And they just had like a separate building for, that's where we stayed. So I'm not sure if the main area was just like the hotel facilities, but our room was in a different building, and it was an amazing hotel. I believe the time that we were in Antwerp, we went there for a long weekend, so for 4 days. And I think we stayed about 75% of our time that we were there inside the hotel because it was just amazing. And on the flip side, Antwerp wasn't really, it wasn't really that. It is a cute city, but if you just walk through the city like once, you've seen it. It's not one of those cities where you're like seeing something new every day. It's just, or maybe I just experience it differently, but that is how I experienced it. So yeah. And so that was one of the best stays I had. The opposite one, so the one that I didn't feel like it was worth every penny, it could have easily been half, is pretty much my last stay in the hotel in Paris, La Fantaisie, which was such a shame because I was so looking forward to that. I was so happy with the hotel that we booked because I saw the photos. It looked amazing and it was totally my vibe. I have to say it wasn't bad. But the hotel costed twice as much as the Antwerp hotel, as the Botanic Sanctuary. And they had the things, they had the facilities, but the service, I don't know, it just wasn't 5-star worthy. There was like something that just came up in my mind is that when we were leaving and they were picking up the suitcases, the one that was picking up our suitcases didn't really speak English. He asked if we spoke French, and I'm all for, well, that is totally different story, so let's not get into that. But that's just not something that you ask, that you ask when you are talking to guests of a 5-star hotel where you work. So that was just basically an example. We also had at breakfast, I asked for a bowl of berries, so strawberries, those things, obviously, because those are berries. And he mentioned, okay, I'm going to take a look to see what we have. He came back with a bowl and it was not the best quality, but okay, I was willing to just pick out the ones that were still good. And then there was a bug on the bowl. So, if I see a bug, I'm not eating that. I'm not touching it. So I told someone, there's a bug in here, and so you can take it away. And then they inspected it, and he came back and he said, yeah, we cannot find a bug. Okay. But it's there. Yeah, we looked through it like 2-3 times with different staff members. We cannot find the bug. Okay, are you seriously having a discussion with a guest right now if there was a bug or not? I've seen it. My sister has seen it. It was there. Okay? Those things, that's just not how it's supposed to be. And also, I don't really want to get into the full experience we had at the hotel, but also when we arrived, it was a standing check-in, which happens, not all the 5-star hotels have sit-down check-ins. I always feel like that's a bummer somehow, but I can deal with it. But it was pretty much the same check-in as I used to do when I was working at the 4-star hotel. Yeah, it was just Nothing special. They also promised us a tour of the hotel. We didn't get that. We didn't got offered a drink, like nothing. It was just basically we go to a reception desk. They ask the information. If everything is correct, they ask for a credit card for a deposit, and you do the deposit, and then okay, yeah, a room is not ready yet, but you can store your luggage here. Like that. That's it. That was the check-in. That's not a check-in at a 5-star hotel, guys. No. So I paid for my stay at that hotel. I paid 3,000 euros. And that definitely wasn't worth the money. So what does 5-star actually mean? There is such a difference in 5-star hotels and what they offer. Obviously, what I just told you, there's such a difference, and you basically never know what you can expect. You never know what you can expect. Thinking about what was the cheapest 5-star hotel that I booked, but I truly think that was the Botanic Sanctuary. Yeah. And that was one of my best experiences. So it doesn't say anything. The price doesn't say anything. You just have to really do your research and just hope that there are more people that are honest like me, because I was doing research obviously for all the hotels, but also for La Fantasy in Paris. And like literally everything I found online about that hotel was nothing but amazing and the best hotel I've stayed at, and those things. But it was just lies. I'm just not believing that this was just my experience, and normally it's really good, because we stayed there for 5 days. So like there are so many different chances to have a different experience. And I'm not someone who says that the first thing was not that good, that it's just all bad. It was every time I got into contact with a person at the hotel, except, by the way, for the concierge. She was amazing and she was really helpful. She was really kind, and her service level was super high. She was amazing. But the rest, and then I'm talking about like 8 people that I have had encounters with, it was just not good. And it wasn't the most expensive one. I would say it was mid-range. The Rome edition was the most expensive one, but that was also a really, really good hotel. I don't have anything to say about the Rome edition other than that the rooms are really small. You just have to watch my Rome edition review vlog. But the rooms were really small, but every time that you have like a concern or anything, they will solve it like within 10 minutes. And it like that level of service I got there, it blew my mind. That was amazing. That was truly an amazing hotel. So, yeah. So make sure that you really do your research and not just trust that a hotel will be amazing just because it's 5 stars, because it doesn't say anything. And I can talk to you guys about what you get when a price is like justified, which you are supposed to get in terms of service, attention to detail, and just the feeling that you have. But it is something that you have to experience. I can talk about like my feelings and how I believe that you should experience a stay at a 5-star hotel, but it can be different for everyone, and that makes it a little difficult. But what I can tell you, what I expect from a 5-star hotel, literally the 5-star experience that I expect at a 5-star hotel, I'm sorry, it starts with a sit-down check-in. That is just like the level of service that you expect at a 5-star hotel. Period. just, that they know who you are, they know where you stay. And I'm not expecting that everyone at, let's say, the front desk knows immediately in what room you're staying in, but they should know the conversations that you had. If you are talking about that you are, I don't know, doing some kind of activity, and then the next time that you see them, they should ask you, how did you like it? What was it like? Blah, blah, blah. That they remember those things. That is important. I don't care if you know my room number by heart. I don't care about that. But those things should be really on top of mind. And yeah, just the level of service. What I also feel like is that when you check into a hotel and you go to the room, that someone brings you to the room, someone shows you where everything is, how everything works. That should just be a part of the 5-star service. Let me think if there is anything else. Yeah, and I feel like it should just be the feeling that you have. It should just be like everything is taken care of. You don't have to think about anything. And the hotel takes care of literally everything. You don't have to think about getting the luggage to the room or getting the luggage back to the reception or having to ask where the breakfast is and all those things. It should be part of a 5-star hotel experience. So what are the red flags to look out for? I am a pretty experienced traveler, and I have stayed in quite a lot of luxury hotels, of 5-star hotels. And I am still learning about the red flags every time that I'm booking a hotel. And something I learned from my last trip to Paris is that it can also be a red flag if you only see content reviews online that it was the best experience that they ever had. You have to dig in deeper. If that's the only thing you get to see, you have to dig in deeper. And what I mean by that, and what would be digging deeper mean, is that you can just reach out to one of the creators that you see that has created content about the hotel and saying it was the best stay that they ever had. Just ask them questions like, hi, I'm thinking about booking this hotel. Is it really the best hotel you've ever stayed at? And what was so good about it? And, just ask the critical questions. Because in today's world, you have 5-star hotels that are just expensive and 5-star hotels that are actually luxurious. And, other red flags are obviously bad reviews. And what I also want to say about bad reviews is that you should look for themes in the reviews. So if you have like a bad review here and there, depending on how bad, obviously, but it can happen that, I don't know, someone decides to book a night in a hotel and that night was just not what they expected. Also, some people can really whine a lot. So you have to really look for multiple reviews about that. Because, especially if someone just stayed for one night, it is not really a full experience that you have, because you are arriving at 3 p.m. basically, because that's usually the check-in time. You arrive at 3 p.m. The only things that you experience there are dinner time, evening time, so perhaps the bar, breakfast the next morning, and pack your things and leave. So that's not a full experience. But I feel like there are a lot of people that are just booking like one night and have a lot to say, and I feel like you have to at least stay 2 nights before you can actually give it like your full, you can call it like a real experience, and you can actually talk about it. Because I feel like you should at least have encountered different people. If you are staying for one night, then you see one person at the front desk when you arrive, or one person that you usually interact with, that you check in with, and one in the morning. So you don't see many different people. What makes me decide a hotel is worth the splurge? I just do a lot of research before I actually book a hotel. I do a lot of research on just content online. So on YouTube, I look for the hotel, on Instagram, TikTok, and I look for reviews on booking.com. I usually use booking.com as like my search engine for hotels. So I can really only look at the top reviewed hotels on booking.com, because on booking.com people don't care. They just tell you how it is. So don't just look for the creators' vlogs and all that, but also from guests that actually stayed there without wanting to get something out of it, you know? You know what I mean? And I'm not bash talking creators because I'm also a creator, but that just gives you like the full circle picture. And if everything is good, then that's my decision that it's worth the splurge. Also, depending on how big the splurge is, because I am not a person who books a hotel for 5,000 euros for just 2 nights. I'm not doing that. So we keep it, I wouldn't say budget. I have like this price range in mind that if I go somewhere for 2 nights, it shouldn't cost me more than 2,500, 3,000 euros. If I go somewhere for 4 or 5 nights, it shouldn't cost me more than 4,000 euros. But what I always try to do, I always try to keep it within the 3,000 euros. If I stay somewhere for 2 nights, if I stay somewhere for 4 nights, I always try to keep it around the 3,000 euros, because I feel like that's an amount that you should be able to get like a very good luxury experience out of. I don't need, except if we're talking about the Disneyland Hotel, but I don't need a room that will cost me like 5,000 euros or something. Very curious about your experiences, obviously. Have you ever splurged on a 5-star hotel and regretted it? Or have you maybe found one that completely blew you away? Tell me about your experience, because I am very curious. Make sure to subscribe to the podcast and on YouTube. And that's it for this week. Next episode, I'm taking you behind the scenes of my Paris trip. The things that went wrong, the moments that didn't make the vlog, and everything in between. And trust me, you're going to want to hear this one. And with that, this is episode number 5. I have decided to launch my podcast on July 6th with 5 episodes. So that includes this one. So if you're here on July 6th or somewhere between July 6th and July 13th, then this is basically your last episode. And the next one will arrive next Monday. So I'm super excited that you're here, and I hope to see you again next week. And that's the confession for today.